I thought I'd redo my mission prep photograph, the Star Wars Hasbro Black Series toy photograph. I thought I'd redo it step by step and sort of show some of the techniques I use to get the results that I get. And this was very much an experiment. This image, or the one you're going to see eventually, it's an experiment in adding a more dynamic background to this very basic set of 2 sheets of wood painted black. So I'll start off with my image, the first image that I took, which is of the Black Series Scout Trooper and the speeder bike, and a couple of props that I've made for the purpose of this image. The intention now is to remove this stand and make it look like the speeder bike is floating. So what I need to do is I've got my camera roll open from my memory card. Now this, I use a Sony Alpha A6000 to shoot. It's a mirrorless DSLR, and I'm shooting in aperture priority for this shot with manual focus. This first image, as I said, is the Biker Scout with the bike, and then what I did for the second image in this collection was go for a repose of the same figure. I only own the one, so I took the bike out to give myself a clean plate in the background, which you're going to see in a moment, and then give myself a reposed action figure. So what I want to do is pull that second shot down to the bottom, and now what I'm going to do with this first image is mask off this image. And what that allows you to do, if you add a mask, it allows you to paint with black over sections of the image, and it will make that part of the image invisible. So what I'll normally do, just for example here, I'll use quite a hard brush at 100% opacity. If I knock out a couple of areas of that stand, you can see the result is an invisible stand. If I go to image 2, as you can see, there's some color differences there. If I pull my curves panel in, I should be able to adjust the levels in that background image so that they match the levels of the image above, which I think that's pretty close. So I can continue now with a slightly softer brush. Oops, that's a rookie error. Make sure that when I'm painting on the actual layer that I'm working with, and that will enable me to get a shot of that stand. So there is an extra little tool. This select tool allows me to highlight areas of the image that I want to be working with. So I want to be deleting from this area. So I can select anything I want to paint out. So I'm just going to select the stand. This is kind of like, in Photoshop, I think the equivalent to this is, I think it's the magic wand. And then I'll go back to my mask. Let's get rid of my effects with my paintbrush and paint that out. I'll make my, you can use brackets, keyboard shortcut, make my brush a little larger. And then suddenly, magically, we have a floating bike. So I can now refine some of that. So I now have a floating bike. So what I want to do now is I want to comp back in the other Scout Trooper. So I'm going to go now back to my photos, and I want to drag in a copy of the second Trooper. There we go. So we're centered. So now I can add a mask to this layer and delete what I don't want by painting it out. And the reason I use masks instead of just deleting is because I can put stuff back if I need to. Okay, pretty sure that he's 100% pasted back in. I'm saving as I go over a working document that has layers. Okay, next up. Now we've got our two characters together on screen. What I need to do is clone in extra pieces of set. But I'm going to recompose this image. Now I'm going to clone in some set extensions. So I want the clone tool, and with the clone tool activated, I can select an area that I'm going to clone. Now, some of this isn't very clean. Obviously, it's pulling across some of the characteristics of that image. I'm going to reduce my brush size, and I'm going to clone this section. And then over there. So I'll now use my repair tool, this little band-aid type thing will help me sort of blend some of those areas in. And you can also do little repair bits. As I've got some chip paint there, a couple of dirty bits of flooring, so I'll just repair those as I go. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some set augmentation, and the way I'm going to do that is using basically a white on black graphic that I built. It's a little large, frame sort of there. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to change this blending to screen so that they're not hard black on the surface of the image, and I want to do that there as well, so they look much more natural now within the image. I'm going to move these over slightly so this will look a little different from my original version of this shot, and I'll move this one over also so they're at the edges of the image almost. And then what I want to do really is I want to punch through that layer to reveal the parts of these characters and that speeder bike that I'm missing. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select, let's just deactivate those layers for a moment. I'm going to select with my select tool the speeder bike that I want to be visible because it is in front of the light panel on the wall in this Imperial facility. So now I can activate my pill lights, and now I'm going to want to invert my selection so that it is everything that isn't the back of that speeder bike, and add a mask to it. So the speeder bike will punch through. I'll deselect, and now you can see that it looks like the pill lights are on the wall behind the speeder bike. And I'm going to do the same now on this other speeder bike rider. And then down here, this gets a bit tricky. Let me zoom in. This gets a little tricky now because we've got black on black. So I'm going to switch over now to my lasso tool, and I'm going to make a negative selection of everything I want to remain visible. There we go. So I can now go to these pill lights, make a inverted selection, add a mask, and I should see everything I want to see through the pill lights layer. I'll zoom back out, deselect that, and essentially that is two sets of pill lights applied to that layer. Right, this is going to be the red pill lights that we saw by the elevators in Return of the Jedi. I'm going to change that over to screen mode so we get a nice clear image. Actually, to save myself some work, I'm going to go a little higher so it's above that memory card. And then what I want is I want that to be red. So I'm going to go to my tools, I'm going to go to my effects, and I'm going to pull in curves. I have my favorites, tools that I use a lot. And what I want to do now is I want to make those red, so I'm going to pull down anything that isn't red. And that leaves me with the red pill lights that we know and love. And I'm going to hit that with just a little bit more of a blur. Going to give it maybe not 5 pixel blur, 10 pixel blur, I'll give it a 5 pixel blur. Just to sort of help that blend into the background a little bit. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer. And I'm going to pull the duplicate down. And then I'm going to mask out what I need to punch through. My pill lights, hit that with a mask, and it will pop that behind that speeder bike effectively. That's basically a walkthrough of what I had done earlier before I had the idea to sort of screen capture this thing. So it's multiple images taken with one action figure, composited those two together so that we have two characters. Took an image without the speeder bike in it so that I could layer mask out the stand and make it look like the bike was floating, and then use these digital adornments on the physical set to augment it and make it look like an Imperial facility. A couple of little props in there that I made, and we've got a Star Wars toy photograph that I'm really pleased with. Hope you found this useful. I hope that you'll have a crack at doing something similar. This Pixelmator app is a lot easier to work with than Photoshop, but if you want a little bit more power, that might be the way to go, even though it can be somewhat costly. But yeah, I hope you found this useful. Thank you for watching, and the next one I do, hopefully I'll have the opportunity to slap a lightsaber on something, because that is always fun. Okay, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.